we are never truly lost. Well, okay, sure. Maybe we get turned around for a few days in the woods, where life just feels like it's getting the best of us and everything's going wrong. And I'm Mike Martin, and I've stood right where you're standing, lost, beaten down, like nothing's ever gonna change. And that's why I built this camp. And that's why I'm inviting you to join me and all the members of this wild community. Because you know what, friend? It does get better. So come along with me into the wild and let me show you this awesome, unique skill set that lays within inside of you. With help from the land, we're going to unlock the steward that's inside each and every one of us that will lead the way out of the darkness and into healing. Here at the Camp of Healing on Project Mindfully Outdoors. All right, so we've already kind of warmed ourselves up a little bit and touching base, and let's go ahead and talk a little bit about, the experience of how you ended up becoming a relationship coach.
Okay, so I was into coaching before the relationship piece came in. I was helping people accomplish dreams, by kind of taking intentional steps, having a mission, engaging with other people, looking at your obstacles. But then, and that was all well and good. And then within my own relationship, my husband became depressed. And he became depressed the same year that both my parents died. And if the straight hair could stand up, well, that's exactly what it did. And I took him along. He's a man who'd only showed generosity and kindness to myself and our children. And I was completely angry and I can't believe you're doing this to us and blaming. And I was looking for a couples counselor for us. And I would bat them away like somebody bats flies away, this is rubbish, this is rubbish, this is rubbish. Until I found the work that I now do, relational life therapy or coaching. It's the work developed by Terry Real, where somebody took me on. The therapist doesn't just look, it wasn't like me coming to present, here's my husband, fix him. They were like, I see a grandiose woman here. She didn't necessarily put it that way, that you're grandiose. We said, let's take a look at you, lady, a little bit. And that was wonderful. It was wonderful that somebody could take me on as well. So a lot of the couples I see who are stuck, they have grandiose women and shut down men. And nobody takes them on. We do have grandiose men sometimes and shut down women. But very often grandiose women or grandiose people are not taken on. In the therapy world, we take on the shame. But this work, we take on both the shame and the grandiosity. We see it as a spectrum. It's a spectrum of contempt. That either I'm being contemptuous to you, I'm looking down my nose at you, or I'm being contemptuous to myself. You're such a loser. It's the same energy. It's that flashlight either goes in or it goes out. And when we can get off that conveyor belt of contempt and come into what I call the center of health, it's when I can hold myself and the other in warm regard at the same time. Because, and here is the little gem, that a human's value is no bigger and no less than anyone else. We were both put here. We can't add to it and we can't take away from it. It's just what it is, right? But we tend to, and it comes from the inside out, but we tend to think of performance-based attribute. Do you know how much money I earn? Do you know I drive a big car? Or other attribute, big for women. If you think I'm great, then I'm great. Or we have, what other attributes? I can't remember the other one, but very much from the outside in. I need to be warmed up by the sun to feel good about myself. And that will never work. It needs to come from the inside out. And that will only happen when we look at each other eye to eye. And love demands democracy. We cannot have one above and one below to be really intimate. I've said a lot there. It's a lot to take in.
Oh no, that was actually perfect because there's a lot of that I can definitely see and identify with, from not only from the path that I've walked, but also even where I'm at nowadays. I mean, like I shared with you before we started, that was a pretty traumatic event as far as the transition that really started things. And, I somehow seem to have gotten latched within that withdrawing aspect of, the habits that I formed during that phase. And
Excuse me.
even though I'm conscious of it now and I make the effort to, combat it and deal with it, it still tends to be a real stumbling block.
I hear you. And it's what I call a losing strategy. And we work with 3 stages. A very basic stage is our wounded child, kind of person that just wants to climb into your lap and cry for 1,000 years. Or there's the adaptive child that adapted to something that happened at a very young age. And withdrawal for you might have been a very, very intelligent way for you to keep safe. However, in your functional adult life, it didn't serve you. Withdrawing, or there are about 5 of these losing strategies. Withdrawing will never get you closer to what you want. But withdrawing will keep you safe and protected. But we can't be both protected and connected. We sometimes have to let down a little bit of guard and be vulnerable to become connected again.
And I'm finding, at least in my experience, it's a very tight rope to walk.
Mm-hmm.
Being able to find that balance with that. I've really learned that it comes down to a personal decision as far as how you interact with things. But the biggest hang up at times can really be battling the way that perspective that you have based off of those scars and those attributes. And when you
Exactly.
learn how to, I guess, put one foot in front of the other, you kind of start to get into a bit of a flow state where you almost forget to look through those old lenses.
Right. If we can have someone help us understand what those triggers are, where that adaptation comes from, because the adaptive child part of us is not interested in relationship. It's interested in protection. And most of us live our adult lives through our adaptive child, and we're very rewarded for it. But it does a hash of our relationship. So you find people who are doing so well, they can become presidents, they can become CEOs, right? But when it comes to their personal lives, they're making a hash of things with their kids and with their partners, because they're behaving from that adaptive child part rather than the functional adult, which is interested in relationship, is interested in the other's perspective, is interested in saying, wow, I think what I just said really hurt you. Tell me more. But we don't often learn those skills. And there are skills which need to be learned. So we behave with what I call a knee-jerk reaction. And then I try and encourage people to rather choose door B, because we can never change the other. But if we change our responses, wow, the magic will start to happen.
And I've definitely discovered that comes from taking the time to look inward and realize that, we put a value on what people tell us and how people react to us, but that kind of value, it comes and it goes. So when you take the time to actually look inward and discover who you are, you build a value for yourself that nobody can take away from you. And
Right.
that, I feel like that is when you start to get that momentum to be able to become inquisitive, almost as if you're stepping outside of survival mode, really.
Right. When you're in survival mode, you're not interested in relationship.
Right.
That's where we thrive. We don't thrive just by building ourselves up. We survive, we thrive when we do it together. I'm strong, you're strong. How are we going to manage this life together? How are we going to manage? Let's face the challenges together as a team. We're not adversaries, we're a team. And people, we often forget that. But you said another beautiful thing that, if I may, I'd just like to highlight about what other people say about us. So we have another spectrum of boundaries where we go from being completely walled off to boundaryless. And the center is being protected and connected at the same time. Whereas you and I can have a different opinion, but we can still be connected. That's what being protected and connected means. You can vote Democrat, I can vote Republican, but it doesn't mean we need to hate each other. We can take the time to listen to each other's views and also agree to disagree. This might be a topic that really works us up. So let's not focus on that. Let's focus on the other things that are in the relationship. And that boundary, if you think of it as an orange rind, you've got the orange peel on the outside and the white on the inside. So the white on the inside is like our containing boundary. It's like your skin. Your skin contains your internal organs. So the inner rind contains you. It protects the world from you. You don't just scream and shout and your sexual energy all goes outside. You have some kind of restraint. And the outer boundary is almost like a windshield that somebody can throw a comment at you. It be like an egg going on the windshield. It can go splat. Or it can come in. That's about me. No, but that part's not about me. And we want to see that those boundaries are porous a little bit, but not completely, that I'm boundaryless. I need you to make me feel happy, or that I'm completely walled off. Anything you say doesn't go in. I'm sitting 5 feet away from you, or 5 inches away from you, but nothing's going in. I am walled off. Does that make sense?
No, it does actually, because when I think about what you just said, and I found it's a very common perspective is to, like we keep touching on, finding that principle or that value from what somebody gives us, because looking internally and I guess building the foundation as far as yourself goes is a very hard and a very scary thing. So, and a lot of the times when we're looking for that value externally and we jump into whatever, then we hit that withdrawal state, at the very first time somebody does something that we don't agree with, or the very first time those boundaries are pushed, just out of the fact that we don't really know a whole lot about ourselves because we're scared to go there.
And that's where having peers, a community, mentors, teachers, coaches, therapists who, believe in relational recovery and relational living are so helpful. When people say, sometimes people say to me, we're a stuck couple. That's what I work with. Couples who are stuck. As I say, we're going to be a 3-part brain now. That's going to give us more. I'm offering my brain to help a solution that can't find a solution as a 2-brain system. We can't work these things out by ourselves.
Right. Honestly, I think you just transitioned into probably a really good place to go with this conversation. That recovery, because relationships, they come, they go, regardless of how they end. They leave us with a little bit of a scar at the very least. Those things compile, and ultimately they do add up to that instinct to withdraw, to abandon, to disappear.
Mhm.
And when those are not addressed, it can become a really messy situation for yourself.
It's messy when you don't have that outside resource to help you navigate it. Not everybody, you should know, it's either withdrawal or it can be freeze. I'm here and I cannot move, I cannot change the system, or I want to try and fix it. I'm so desperate to fix it. And sometimes, very often, it can be fixed with the right support, but it needs support. It doesn't have to always be a withdrawal. And I'll tell you what I encourage my clients to remember. It's not just about them. It's also about if they have children. Do you have children?
Yes, they do.
They watch us very carefully. They watch us very closely. And they are taking in how we present adult lives. In fact, Pia Melody said it so beautifully. What is an adult? It's actually a child in grown-ups' clothing. It's the concept of an adult that we cobbled together when we looked at our parents. Did we ever see repair in a relationship? I haven't yet met a client who said to me, oh, I saw my parents repair. I saw them make up. Oh, I saw them fight. No, I never saw them repair. So our children don't know that. How do you repair? Because every relationship goes through, every healthy relationship, harmony, rupture, repair, again and again and again. A great relationship isn't one of harmony, isn't one of Facebook, rah, 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 look how happy we are. It's of the harmony, the rupture, and that coming together. And that's where the magic happens. Because each time you come together, you build trust, you build more trust, and you deepen your connection. And then something else comes along. But the coming together can happen quicker and quicker. So if my husband and I could fight for 5 days at a time, now it can be grumpy for half an hour. And then because he's done the work with me, and because we've gone to groups together, whatever, it'll be like, okay, so how long do you want to keep this fight on for? You want to keep fighting, or you want to have a nice evening? You want to watch something together? And then we can make the repair.
Yeah, it all comes from that personal decision. That's one thing that I think when you walk any type of healing journey or self-discovery journey, regardless of how you pull it out of the clouds, it becomes kind of like that common denominator is, how you want to react to a situation. Yeah, people get under your skin regardless of what the relationship that you have with them is, but you don't have to make that decision to be angry. You can kind of learn to accept that, maybe that's just the way that they perceive the world and respond to it. And I think once you start to do that, then you start to really free yourself to enjoy the more positive, or as I call them, the gripping we're in type moments of life.
Right. You get to decide how you want to respond. Do you want to withdraw? Do you want to be angry? Do you want to control? Or do you want to use your words and say what it is you want at this moment? And remember that you're in this relationship. Why? Because you love it, that person. You're living together, right? So, and it works with all relationships. I happen to be seeing a lot of, at the moment, of children and parents in my clinic. More kind of adult children who are struggling with their parents. It's the same. It's the same language of how do you want to respond when something happens? Or do you want to react? React is just reacting, is that knee-jerk reaction without having any information coming in. Responding is taking pause. Saying, let me just take in the information and see what's needed here.
The first thing that comes to mind is the idea that like everything really starts with the seed, right? regardless of what the relationship is, you're there because you end up having this dream of this is where I want to go. These are the things that tie into it. And ultimately at the end of that path, I'm gonna be this person. This is what I have in mind for who I'm gonna be. So as you're going through and you're walking the trail, you kind of look at each stimuli and you think about, does the response that the initial impulse, is that going to further my progression toward becoming who I want to be, or is it going to set me backwards? And I think a lot of that comes with compassion and understanding, knowing, as we mentioned, about how people are going to get under your skin. They're going to push your buttons, but do you respond in a way where your response is something that you're going to be okay with, or are you going to have to go back and tend to the field because what you did was detrimental to the progress that you're trying to make?
Right. So I love what you're saying, and there are two things that I'd like to highlight here because it's profound what you're saying. It's very beautiful. When somebody cuts you off on the road, you could be looking at the back of his neck and like daggers are flying at him. Or you could be saying, yeah, he's an asshole, but you know what? He doesn't deserve my rage. He doesn't deserve my anger. Let him go. That's making a choice of how I'm going to respond. The other part, the flip side of that you used with the compassion, is to remember to hold ourselves with compassion and kindness, because we are human beings. We are flawed human beings. And sometimes we lose it. And sometimes we say stupid things. And to remember that I am enough, despite the fact that I yelled at the guy who cut me off. I am enough, despite the fact that I didn't get that promotion at work. I am enough, despite the fact that I yelled at my son tonight. And to hold that compassion, and then to make the repair where you can.
I think it boils down to timing, really. If you're really looking at it with making that repair when you can, is really setting the stage, setting everything into perfect timing and into motion in order to make that repair. Because when you take that conservation type mindset and you realize, yeah, I'm gonna make mistakes. I've made mistakes leading up to today, and I'm never gonna be perfect. So I do the best with what I got in that moment. I think it still gives you the opportunity to move closer to who you're ultimately trying to become. And that ends up, helping those interpersonal relationships to really grow.
And to remember your partner. It's very easy for us to see that our partners aren't perfect.
Right.
But we aren't perfect partners either. We all have this fantasy of we're going to marry gods and goddesses. They're going to come and they're going to heal all our wounds and complete the conversations we never completed with our parents. And in reality, what happens is this collision of their flaws and our flaws, and they have the perfectly sharpened, boiling spear which they stick in our eyeball. That is relationship. And how are we going to manage that? That is the truth of relationship. That they come and it's almost like this terrible screeching sound. And what are we going to do with it? How are we going to manage it?
Well, I think that just like how we each come up with our own set of coping skills for things that we face, is, as a pair, developing those same kind of coping skills, almost like a safety blanket. You're able to say, hey, the stress level is up here, so maybe we should go try whatever coping skill number A is. And if that don't work, then you run down the list and you almost build like a safety mechanism, because internally when that stress level is that high, you turn to those coping skills. You're doing it to prevent yourself from acting out, be it internally or externally. You're trying to prevent that situation. So within the context of a relationship, if you're able to do the same thing, you're kind of stopping that forest fire from happening before it even sparks.
Right. So what you're saying though is, excuse me, is very beautiful in theory. But when I'm triggered, when I'm hot, none of the theory is going to work. I am going to just knee-jerk, lash out, go wild, go berserk. Unless I've taken care of my inner child. Unless I've taken care of that little child that adapted to something. That adaptation no longer suits me. That inner child is driving the bus and needs to get its sticky hands off the steering wheel. And me, the big Beverly, the grown-up Beverly today, I'll protect you. You be behind me, but you are not managing my relationships anymore. The fact that your parents weren't there for 3 months and you get desperate, no. I'm here to hear what you need, but you're not running the relationship anymore because you just make a mess of my relationships. You did a great job when I was 4. But that kind of desperation just doesn't work as an adult. It's not appealing to anyone. It's not attractive. It's not sexy. It's never going to get you what you want.
Now, I love that metaphor because I've done that for years. As far as
we all have.
as far as like that struggle to I guess stomp your feet and get what you want. And then you realize that really it comes from the experience of putting boots on the ground and actually walking instead of stomping.
Right.
So I've got one question that I love asking after my guest gets warmed up that I know I didn't warn you about beforehand.
That's it. Makes it more authentic, right? That's what relationships are. That's the reality of relationships. We don't know everything beforehand. Throw it out.
Exactly. All right. So from the life and experience that you've had, you have to hit us with some not only inspiration but wisdom from the journey.
Okay. I can try that. So one of my own practices, I'll share 2 practices. One is that there's nothing that harshness does that loving kindness doesn't do better. And that means the harshness between my own ears, the harshness between me and others, and the harshness to community, to people I don't even know. The harshness, the judgment that comes up between my ears. I would never talk to somebody else like that. But then there is other judgment that comes with other people. And there's no redeeming feature to it. When it comes to disciplining children, there's nothing that harshness does, that loving kindness won't do better. That's number 1. Number 2, a daily practice that my husband and I have. We end our day each night we share 3 things we're grateful for the day. Very often that the other might have done for ourselves. I'm grateful that my father-in-law lives with us. Maybe my husband will say, I'm grateful that you took my father to the doctor today, let's just say. So something maybe personal. I'm grateful that you're here today. And something, I'm happy I came home safely from work. I personally then quietly in my head go through my entire day. And I try and at least find 10 things. But what I can tell you about that is that it's expanded for me the goodness that there really is to see in every single moment of the day. In every day, there is so much goodness that I might have gone unnoticed for me. And this experience has done that. Yeah, and I see how it's also with my husband, it's expanded him as well. I think that's the benefit. It's expanded his ability to see in his everyday, unrelated to us, things that he's grateful for.
I love the idea of gratitude. I think that it's something a lot of us struggle with until we hit some point in life that, the small things that you have really jump out at you, and you kind of learn this new take on how much you really appreciate those things. And then from there, it's kind of like planting a tree. Is you got those basic things that are there, and it expands. It really changes your perception of the world around you. And then I've definitely got to mention or say something in regards to that idea of huffing and puffing, whether it's with a child or it's in the context of any relationship. When you get angry and you know, start basically huffing and puffing and yelling at them, demanding that they do this, do that, it doesn't get you very far in the long run. The only thing you're teaching somebody is how to not trigger you personally. You're not really helping them to learn how to think through a situation in a healthy manner to achieve the outcome that they want. You're taking away that space when you huff and puff. So being able to touch into that compassion, that gratitude, that even though in the moment the situation is hard, it's difficult, I'm triggered, I still get to go through it. I'm still happy that I'm here in this moment.
Right.
And I think that goes a long way to not only helping you maintain your own form of health and internally, but it also goes a long way to foster that health, within the person that you're interacting with, but also the relationship.
Right. And I would just like to hone in on that when we rage at our children, especially if it's a same-sex parent, we're teaching them two things. Remember that spectrum of shame and grandiosity? We're shaming them on the one hand. On the other hand, we're also teaching them when you'll be a grown-up man, this is how you get angry. We're teaching them the grandiosity as well.
Right.
We're teaching them that this is how a grown man behaves when he's angry. And we don't have any patience for shame. If you shame me, I'll be there for about 3 seconds. And then as the adult, I'll automatically go to grandiose and I'll stop blaming you because I feel awkward with myself. So there's a lot of messages when we're losing it with our kids that they're receiving from us. Because remember, they're watching. How does a grown-up behave? And then they cobble that together for themselves and they take that into their relationships.
It's that matter of trying to figure out life in real time, really. And then you got that set of eyeballs. The only instruction manual that they end up with when they move on to that stage of life is what they see. So
they learn what they live.
Exactly. So if you hold that in some form of mindfulness that those eyes are there, then I think that kind of shapes the way that you view things or you react to things as well.
For sure. If you remember that they're watching you closely. Dysfunction and trauma goes from one generation to another, like a fire in the woods, just burning down everything in its way, trees, animals, everything, until one person has the courage to face the flames and say, stop. And that person heals the people who've come before, the generation came before, and it spares the people who are coming after, it spares the children. And I call that person a relational hero. They've decided, I want to look at this shit that I'm up to. I'm too angry. I'm too rageful. Whatever it is, I want to take a look at it. I want to take a look at my part in the relationship.
Well, I think that hero is also a conservationist because,
Mm-hmm.
we're all here trying to protect what we have in the wilderness now for
Absolutely.
generations to come. Well, scale that back. Look at it just solely through your eyes in the mirror at yourself because you got to conserve today for the days and the weeks and the months and the years to come. We've only got one go around, so once that day's over with, it's never coming back. Let's work to make the next that much better.
And I love what you said about scale it back. Because very often I got New Year's messages, may there be peace in the world. And you know what? We might not be able to bring peace to the Middle East or to the world, but we can bring peace, that conservation, into our living rooms and into our bedrooms. We can start there. I can start with my family. You can start with yours. And one family at a time, we can bring healing.
I think that was probably some of the most powerful words that were said to me at the early stages of that talk therapy journey is quit looking at things on such a large scale. You'll never achieve it if you keep that picture in mind.
Right.
Break it down to the smaller steps, because if you can take a footstep, you can ultimately get toward that ending goal.
Exactly. What can you do? That's
Right.
the question. In your little life, in your little world.
And that's all it is too, is each of us with that independent little world that adds up to really the human experience and the whole reason that we're here.
Exactly. Exactly. You often find people who they haven't necessarily looked at themselves and they take on these bigger causes. But very often there's something personal that wants to be taken care of.
Right. Sometimes it's finding that metaphor though, really. Finding that little way that I can see something that I turn into, a tinder pile. And then I've got to go out and I've got to find a flint and steel or whatever in order to make the spark. When I make the spark in the tinder pile and I breathe flame into it, I breathe life into it, then I'm lighting the way for really, the rest of today and into tomorrow.
Exactly. Beautiful.
So as we're starting to wind down, you got to let people know where they can get in touch with you and they can find out more about your work.
Okay, so I have a website, www.bev.co.il. I think that's the best place to get in touch with me, through the website. You're going to put it up now?
Oh yeah,
Oh,
I'll put it out with the show notes and
oh,
everything. So
okay, thank you. I do have presence on Facebook and LinkedIn, but the best place to get hold of me is really through my website. It's easy enough. And
perfect.
there's reading material there are podcasts, if people, and there's of course a way of getting in touch with me.
Perfect. I'm really glad that we got the opportunity to connect. I want to say thank you.
Thank you very much. It was lovely meeting you.
Absolutely. We'll have to hook up and do it again soon.
Okay, I'm game.